Let's begin our program, and we have a presentation by Principal Salvatore on the Daniel Hand Program of Studies and some of the language changes on.
Yeah, I just want to welcome TJ and Jen tonight to our first curriculum meeting, right? Our first one with our new board members, so welcome. Our formal committee members, of course, are Stephen Penn, the chair, Kathy Miller is returning, and Jen Gordon is new to the committee, so welcome. And our other board members as well, Maureen and Seth. So this is an annual presentation that we do to the committee. Usually we do it a little bit earlier in the year, but the idea is that for a significant amount of time, the Daniel Hand staff is all involved in examining the program of studies and putting forth any changes, big and small, that need to be made in order to reflect new graduation requirements or any course title changes or any other thinking about how the courses are described in the program of studies. So thank you, TJ, for being here tonight.
Thanks, Jill.
I invite you to share the good work.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank the Board of Ed for the invitation to take up your entire hour with 3 presentations tonight. So we certainly appreciate that. And I'd like to thank Jen as well. She is the 3rd presentation, but she can certainly jump in for any of our topics. The first focus for us this evening is our program of studies, and we always do it this time of the year because the master scheduling process begins in January for the next school year, which seems like it's early, but that's pretty typical in high schools. I will state that there aren't as many changes as usual, and that's really based on the issue with COVID that slowed down the curriculum revision process. So we're excited to get that moving forward. We'll talk about that a little more later on. So this is usually a much longer presentation. The changes aren't as detailed this year. The coordinators deserve a public thank you. Melanie Witcher does an incredible amount of work on this, well as Gail Dowling-Hench, a lot of work to get us ready for the master scheduling process. So a quick thank you. And Jen Hawley is always deeply involved in everything relating to scheduling. So you know, I'm the one who presents, but there's a lot of work behind the scenes by those I just mentioned. So technology. Let's see if I try that one more time. There we go. So just an overview of the few topics we're going to talk about this evening. We're going to talk about where we're at with our core values and belief statements. Then we're going to review some department specific updates in the departments that are listed in the slide that is presently being shown. So first and foremost, high schools are required to have a core values and belief statement. We are in the process of revising this. If you saw in the handout, the word draft was much more bold in comparison to what it is here, but this is a draft statement right now, and we've made some changes, and I say we, it's been our entire faculty at this point. We've worked with a coordinator group that did some initial revisions and suggestions. One of the teachers, John Gage, who's our band director, had a group with parents and students and teachers over the summer who got some suggestions for revisions. Our entire faculty took a look at this. And now we're in probably the 5th phase of the process for core values and beliefs. And, you know, some of the changes, if you were curious, you know, we had added local and national communities rather than just saying global communities. The next part, this is a longer piece. We removed the 21st century language. I think everyone knows we're in the 21st century, so we don't have to refer to that anymore. We did add the language specific to profile of a graduate, which is really important. I'll talk about that later, which talks about things like thinking critically, creatively, and being problem solvers. And we also added the addition of the word inclusive with the language for an inclusive community that acts with tolerance. The next piece, we are committed to the following, still work in progress. You know, again, our faculty is paying a lot of attention to this particular document, and in draft form, I have to say I'm pretty happy with it. The last time this document was revised was in 2011. That was our last NEASC accreditation visit date. One of the, and I'll mention this in another presentation later this evening, foundational elements, which is a requirement for accreditation for NEASC, does require an updated core values and belief statement. So we're in really good shape. We're moving forward. We have made a lot of changes. The 2011 document I thought was excellent, but it was outdated. So it's certainly a good time to do this right now when we prepared for our, what we call our collaborative visit, which I'll talk about in the NEAS process. Next steps here, we have a plan on a future date, which is pretty soon, where the different groups of our faculty are not by department, will be reviewing this and giving us input. The coordinators will take that input into account, make some revisions that we believe are appropriate, and then send it back out to faculty again for a final review before we get closer and closer to the final version. It's been a great process, and it's exciting to see over 100 people have their hands in it. You know, we're certainly planning on sharing it with parents as well, with our student body, obviously with central office and the Board of Education. Really important piece that needs to be updated again as part of our accreditation process, but you'll see this listed in our program of studies as well as our handbook. Now, for some of the changes that I just mentioned briefly that we'd be reviewing, some of them are pretty simple and straightforward. You know, for example, we have a new humanities course designation. You know, the humanities students are now required to get up to 9 credits in humanities, which are defined in our program of studies with the particular icon that you see on the screen. Printmaking, which we're excited about, has been added to that. So when a student goes through the program of studies, they can take a look and see if they want to use this particular course to fulfill that requirement. So a simple change, but an important change. The CTE department has some, it looks like a lot of changes, but what that department has done is they've reviewed all of the course descriptions for the following courses, and they made some minor revisions to make sure the course description really aligns with what's going on in the classes. The program of studies is a really important document, but it's in students' minds, it's probably important for about 2 weeks. You know, they're looking at that when they get this electronic version. They read all of the program descriptions and then they select the particular courses. The CTE department really wanted to make sure that the course descriptions matched exactly what's going on in the courses. So not major changes. One thing you'll see when this presentation was sent to you, at the end, all of the course descriptions are actually detailed. So you could review those. We're not going to go over them this evening. That was just for your review, but you know, excited about the ongoing updates. Our departments pay a lot of attention to the program of studies because again, it's a really important document in the month of January and February. The English department, just a quick update, but a very positive update. We had recent news from the NCAA that our AP Lit and Composition course actually fulfills an NCAA requirement. And we label that in our program of studies with that NCAA icon. That will be helpful for a lot of students who are interested in pursuing athletics at the collegiate level. And this is a really popular course. A lot of students take this course, and now that it does meet the NCAA requirements, it puts us in a good place, and it helps our students with course selection when they're planning out their 4 years at the high school. The mathematics department has an update that makes a lot of sense. It's worded, it's a little too wordy right here, but in Polson, there used to be a pre-algebra A and a pre-algebra B prerequisite. And those A and B options are no longer offered. So we changed the language for the high school course to match the option that a middle school student in 8th grade would take as a prerequisite. So it's definitely wordy in this slide, but it's a pretty simple change and it aligns with the 8th graders. Like Jen and the rest of the school counselors will come to Polson in January or in early February to talk about the scheduling process and actually work with the students with their Chromebooks to create their schedules, literally. Sign up for courses, and she'll explain all of the detail to the online scheduling process. But this was a pretty simple change that we thought was important. The social studies department had some significant changes in some of the levels and offerings. The first course that's listed here, you will see it's titled African American / Black and Puerto Rican Hispanic Studies. This is a course that the State Department of Education requires all high schools to offer. We had it in our program of studies last year. We didn't have any students sign up to take it. It's in the program of studies once again. Looking at the depth of the course and the rigor associated, we thought it would be really appropriate to change the course from what currently is offered as a level 2 to a level 1 offering. I anticipate that might pique a little interest, for some students who like to take the level 1 courses more than the level 2. This could be an intriguing course for them to take. We also decided to expand the offering. We first started with offering it to students in grade 11. Again, we didn't have any success with student interest. We're now allowing students in grades 10 through 12 to actually register for this particular course. And if we have enough numbers, we will certainly run the course. Again, last year was the first year it was required to be offered. We'll make the student body aware of these changes, and we do hope some students take it, because there are a few teachers in the social studies department who are certainly interested in teaching that particular course.
Can I jump in for
Of course
one minute, TJ? It might be interesting to note that I did have a student, as part of their civic action project this year, approach me about this very change, feeling that the course would not only be more attractive to students, but expanding the offering and also honoring the level of rigor in the course would be important to honor the content. The content is released by the State Department. It's not created by us. So the content was not available to us last year when the course first was listed. So we just took a stab at listing it as a level 2. Once we saw the content, it definitely is a level 1 course. But I did want to add the student voice piece to that, because I thought that was a really important piece. Thanks, TJ.
You bet, Gail, thanks. The next course in the social studies department is economics, and that change is going from a level 2 to a level 1 course. The social studies teachers actually reviewed the mathematics content of that course with the math department, and the math department agreed this should be a level 1 course. I think that will also pique some interest as well, because a lot of our students do prefer the level 1, but we didn't see level 2 as actually being the appropriate level for this particular course. World Traveler is a little bit different. We're going in the other direction. After looking at the course over a couple of years, input does support changing from a level 1 to a 2 based on student performance and the course content. We do think those 2 changes are going to pique some interest in students who want, some experiences. World Traveler is a really cool course. Economics is a really cool, really rigorous course as well. We will make this information really clear to students before the course selection process is finalized, and we think it will have a positive update. So those are just the changes that are happening for the 22-23 program of studies. And as I mentioned, these are the course descriptions. I'm not going to go over all of them, just so you have access. This is what the students would actually read in the program of studies before signing up or selecting one of these courses. And as we've done last year, we are going to continue our transition to full online registration. That worked really well last year, and it's pretty well received by everyone. So, questions?
Since I'm new to all this, could you just give a brief description of what level 1 versus level 2 is?
So level 1, if you look at the particular, GPA is important to a lot of students, and the level 1 courses, some of our students who are in the interest of really focused, rigorous, hard work. The level 1 courses offer some great challenges, and without question, more work outside of the classroom.
Okay.
The level 2 courses, in my opinion, are still very rigorous. There's not the same workload outside of the classroom. So students try to balance, if it's an interest-based, some kids play the calculator GPA, to see which courses will have a significant impact. If you think of level 1, like the honors courses, that's probably the best comparison. Pretty significant workload. We actually document in the program of studies if a course will typically have more than 30 minutes of homework each night. We put that very clearly. Like some courses have average of 45 minutes to an hour of homework every single night. So in a 6-period school day, if a student takes several honors courses, level 1 or AP, you're looking at hours and hours of workloads. All of our courses in the level 1s do have prerequisites, but we have a really nice override process where if a student's motivated, if the parents are interested in supporting that motivation, even if they don't meet the prerequisite, they can override into those courses. And a lot of our kids do and do quite well. And it's a We have a planner in the back of the program of studies. So the student who has a job participates in an extracurricular activity can figure out how much time they'll be able to sleep in the evening, based on the workload they're going to have and their other responsibilities. I do think our school offers a nice balance of level 1 and level 2 courses. And if you just think of that honors, like if you're in the classroom, it's difficult to distinguish the difference. Sometimes pace is a little faster. The workload outside of the classroom is certainly much more significant.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Yeah, great question, thanks.
How does that play out for the 8th graders? How do they get the information about the courses and their choices? Can you speak a little bit to that process?
You can talk about your preference.
So we do a student orientation with the entire 8th grade. All the coordinators and I go over, we speak with the students and explain the course selection process, kind of try to energize the 8th graders a little bit, also remind them that 8th grade's not over in January, to finish strong. And then we have a parent meeting as well. Last year we did a Zoom meeting, worked out really well. Participation was incredible. We're not sure where we'll be, but we do both of those 2 meetings prior to giving them access to actually register for courses. Our school counselors then, with proximity, literally walk over and meet, usually in science classes. Right?
Yep, in science class.
With the science classes, with all of the 8th graders in smaller groups, and explain the process, answer questions. The teachers in math and world language and science especially have individual meetings with their 8th grade students to talk about recommendations for levels of courses. Like some of the freshman courses aren't level, for example, but some are. So there is a great deal of information. We start to get emails from 8th grade parents, which are great. And I think the transition has been pretty seamless with our 8th graders. And we review as much information as possible. And we also recheck the course requests in June to see if, let's say, the math request, the world language or science request is still the right request based on how the student performed for the second half of the school year. Pretty exhaustive process. Jen does the on-the-ground work with small groups of students, which you can talk about, but I didn't say everything you do.
No, he told me I was going to go next, but he kind of said what I was going to say.
You told me.
But we also talk about what the schedule looks like for a student. So we'll give them samples if you're a band kid. So we kind of lay that out too, because earning credits and these courses are new to them, completely new. So it's fun for us to come over and talk to them about not only the courses, but what classes look like and the experience itself. So.
Do you use any of the high school kids in terms of talking to the 8th graders about these courses?
We don't, but they do help out in some of the orientation process. And I think CTE and band, they come over. So in smaller groups, they do come over.
Yeah, the courses that are not requirements, the teachers in those departments pay a lot of attention to communicating with the previous or incoming grade, because their courses running depends on that. The English department and math department and science, they don't have to come over with as much information. World language, CT, art, they spend a lot of time with students to review, the different offerings. When we have in person, like our CT department brings some robots and shows, the art department brings some art demonstrations, which are really exciting. We're hoping to be able to do that again. At this point, if we stay as is, we'll go that route again, where we'll be in person, which is exciting. The school counselors do a really nice job outlining what students need to do to get the 25 credits that are now required for all classes as we move forward. And the trimester schedule really gives students a lot of options to get way beyond that and choose courses they're interested in as well.
It might be interesting though to have a student come over with us and talk to the students, because they probably relate a little bit better, I would imagine. So it may make it a little more interesting. So I just made note of that. That's a good idea.
They could take my intro.
I'm like, this time I'm going first.
I will say, I really like the sound of just the whole college prep experience right from the get-go, with the kids selecting their classes and configuring a schedule to meet all, the credit load. I guess my only question is it more so like your 10 through 12th graders that have the leveled courses, because so many do have prerequisites? So like a 9th grader would have a more kind of core curriculum, and then they get into choosing the leveled courses typically?
Yes, the math and science are the only two freshman year that they do have the
Oh,
levels, so
okay.
they are pretty general for the other student.
Okay.
And world language will be dependent on their experiences. You know, a student who's
Sure.
taking Spanish throughout the years typically will come over taking Spanish 3 and finish at Spanish 6.
Okay,
But we do offer first year courses like in French or Spanish based on student interest and need. Because the 1 credit world language requirement's new. So that's something students are paying much more attention to. That wasn't a requirement until very recently. So we found that we're offering, you know, like French 1, for example, when typically we wouldn't, because now all students need at least 1 credit. Most of our students take 3 or 4 years worth of world language,
okay.
but the school counseling department does a really nice job communicating. And the parent night, again, we get an incredible turnout and the questions are outstanding. Again, we do all of that prior to when we open up the portal for students to actually register.
I think some years ago too, we did a deep dive into GPA
Mhm.
and whether or not we were going to have students report, or we were going to report for our students weighted or unweighted GPA. It was a huge committee that took place over a period of time. And we ended up with giving students the choice of how they would like to be represented.
Oh, so each individual student can choose whether they want their GPA to be weighted versus unweighted. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, they receive both.
Oh,
And they
So
can
whatever
choose
one
which
they-
ones they want to report.
I see. Okay,
Whatever they think is best for them.
right.
It was a win-win.
Yeah.
That never happens. So our next item is regarding NEASC.
Could I just make a comment? I'm sorry. Dan.
Sure, go ahead.
I was waiting for questions. I don't have a question. I just want to have a comment.
Mhm.
I just want to commend the committees and the groups that you pulled together. Like TJ, you were saying, there's so much that happens behind the scenes, and for teachers to take the time to really put in, you know, have their voice be heard and that it's valued. That is so extremely important, and I really appreciate that that happens. I also am very I'm very happy that everybody's really focusing on these core beliefs and belief statement, and not just kind of like, well, we've got one already, and you know, that you really go back to it, because it truly is the foundation, and that everyone's voice is being heard to revise that, I think is just so important. And I just, as always, that team approach, and the fact that you know, tip your hat to your team, I want to tip it right back and say, what a nice job that your group did.
Thank you, Kathy. I will say one of the most enjoyable meetings this year for me, we had a coordinator meeting just focused on the revisions, an hour and a half, 20 plus people, because a few people were also invited in just discussions, a live Google, making changes, making recommendations, comments for the full faculty. We walked out of there energized. So I certainly could respect what you're saying. It's been a great process. And,
Yeah,
you know,
love
it
it.
leads into, you know, our next topic, which
Yeah, well,
we're
thank
trying
you
to
very-
ensure is a great process as
Thank
well.
As you're transitioning, I know you shared me, even though the African American Latinx course didn't run, you have other courses that have been longer standing that students are enrolling. Can you talk a little bit about those? Jen, is who teaches race, culture, and
Literature.
so we have a really exciting level 1 course, race, culture, and literature in our senior year. Seniors get to select 2 electives, and one of the most popular courses, really challenging course. You know, the number of students that take it out of our senior class is very high. Again, it's one of the most sections that we run. More and more teachers are getting accustomed to teaching that course. You know, that's not one where you just jump in. You know, Gail does a lot of work ensuring teachers are prepared, you know, after the curriculum is written and then ultimately approved by the Board of Ed. It is an exciting course. We're hoping that we could communicate with our students about this new option. And again, I think that transition to level 1, some of the students who have selected, you know, that race, culture, and literature course will be interested because of the level 1 status. And it's a really interesting topic. The curriculum, like Gail said, it's a significant, heavy curriculum. And, you know, that's going to be one of our focuses in communicating with our students who are entering grades 10 through 12 next year to see if we can get someone interested. You know, I'd love to get 15 students or so interested so we could run that course, because it would be exciting. And our students are, you know, it's always interesting. Word of mouth from their peers is probably the #1 driver for the courses they take. So if we can get that course up and running, I think more kids will talk about it and take it.
Going deeper into the construction of that race, culture, and literature course, we actually did an outside consultant coming around the table to help us write the course, Yohiro Williams, who was at the time in Fairfield U, quite renowned as an expert, and he was phenomenal. Usually when you have a PD consult at the table, they're not curriculum people at the same time. I sat there with the writing team for days because he was just the best PD and the best writer that I think I've seen in that arena. So he did move away, but we still have him on call. So I do want to acknowledge him as an expert in writing that course too.
Just for some folks who may not know, PD, professional development,
Thanks. Thank you.
it's alphabet soup.
I know.
We love letters and good education.
And more alphabet soup to come.
Absolutely.
Translate the acronym.
Right.
The public and people run the paper.
So you will certainly hear NEASC a lot, over the next 10 years. And, we are just starting the process of really year one of the 10-year cycle. Our last NEASC visit was in 2011, so we should have started already. COVID pushed everything. So if you're wondering why it wasn't, 2021, the exact date for the accreditation visit, things got pushed for a couple of years. But NEASC stands for New England Association of Schools and Colleges. There's a 10-year cycle for what's called the 2024 protocol. The 2024 protocol means that we're up for the accreditation visit in the fall of 2024. So all schools who fit into that time frame are under this particular protocol. And just for clarification purposes, Daniel Hand right now is currently an accredited high school. So, we're exactly where we need to be. We're now going to have to demonstrate that we've made progress that's expected through NEASC over the next few years. And we're in the middle right now of a self-reflection process. I'll talk about that a little bit later. We have a collaborative conference visit that we're prepping for that was scheduled in the fall of 2022. They didn't give us an exact date yet. That's just a day-and-a-half visit from some members of NEASC that will come to our school and give an assessment of where we're at and write a report. Once we get to that phase, we will have the development and implementation of a growth plan for the 2022 or 22-23 school year. And that will be specific to what we were going to present this evening, which we will present to the board in the future. The difference between the K-8 schools and the high schools, we'll have a school-based one that is from our school, as well as NEASC involved in that process and what we need to do to work on in those particular areas. We have a decennial accreditation visit scheduled in November of 2024. After that visit, there's a new and revised growth plan, based on the feedback we received. We give progress updates in the years 27 through 2030, and then the new cycle begins again in 2031. So I'm just going to go pretty quickly through this so you have an idea. Our entire faculty is involved in this process. We have 2 accreditation coordinators. They're supposed to be teachers. We have 2 outstanding teachers. One, Jennifer Aguzzi, she's our world language program coordinator, and Paul Mezek, he's our science program coordinator. They've been doing tremendous work leading this process. We have a steering committee as well. You can see the names listed there. The principal's required to be on this committee, so I wasn't pushing my way in. It's a requirement. This particular committee, as its name, steering, it makes sure it guides the actual rest of the school in the process. It's the oversight committee throughout the 2-year process of self-reflection, and we've been doing a lot of really good work. If you look here, the self-selection committee members, just the chair people, you can see that there's 5 particular standards listed on the left, and then you could see, like, for example, standard 1, Jennifer Hawley is excited to be the chair for that particular standard. And there's 2 other people who are chairing different components of each standard, or in some cases of one standard. Just to give you an idea of the total number of people involved, these are the leaders who are working with the rest of the faculty who is dispersed into these various groups with a really nice mix of content areas. It's not like all the math teachers and learning culture. We have a nice spread of all the different departments, and they will be working on basically in a reflective process with evidence to see if we actually meet the standard or if we're making progress towards, or if it needs to be a function of our goal. So one of the major changes with NEASC is the standards of accreditation. There are 5 particular standards. That's what I just showed you. I'll show you what they actually are in a moment. There's 32 principles of effective practice, which means we have to have evidence for each of these principles. And I shared that in other slides, which we'll get to in a moment. And then the key piece for the starting point are the foundational elements, which we'll discuss in a moment. The themes in the 2020 standards, and the 2020 standards, the main NEASC gave. Now, that's somewhat applicable now, but when we're in 2030 on the last year of this, they will still be referred to as the 2020 standards. One of the themes is the profile of a graduate, which we're in a great place, really excited about that. We'll talk about that in a moment. There's been a change from the culture of teaching to a culture of learning. That's what they're going to be looking for when they enter our school. They want to know what are students doing and do our practices match our beliefs, which is really important. Their focus, which is excellent, we're ahead of the game on this. We've talked about this for a few years now, right, Gail? The developing a growth mindset for all constituents. And they added a well-being piece for the social and emotional needs, especially as a result of this pandemic we're dealing with. So, these are the standards that we'll be focusing on and the themes. Sorry about that. If you take a look here, these are the actual standards. So the first one's on learning culture, about shared values and responsibility for sharing or meeting the school's vision. The main standard, if you look at the wheels that they show on their diagrams, student learning is the giant wheel. The other 4 actually help that wheel turn. About practices that maximize the impact of learning for each student. Standard 3 is around professional practices that ensure there's structures in place to support and improve student learning. Learning support is standard 4, ensure the school has an appropriate system in place to keep a focus on student learning as well as well-being. That's a new addition. And then learning resources, ensure that the school has resources necessary to meet the needs of all students. So these are the 5 major categories that are referred to as the standards. In summary, if you take a look there, each standard has a principle of effective practice. And what's interesting, years ago, the 2011 approach, there were 52 different indicators they were called. So the reports were exhausting, not only to write, but to read through. It was difficult. They've reduced that to 32 separate principles now. It's much more manageable and, in my opinion, much easier to provide really clear evidence. Ultimately, NEASC will be looking for 3 to 5 pieces of evidence that we can show for each of the 32 principles, each of the 6 foundational elements, and then our self-reflection will communicate where we believe we are and what we need to focus on moving forward. So again, we're in a really solid place. The key piece as a starting point, as it's named appropriately, are the foundational elements. At an absolute minimum, when the accreditation visit happens in the fall of 2024, if a school does not meet all 6 of the foundational elements, they are not going to be accredited. That will be a focal point that we'll have to do a lot of reports on. I actually think we're very close to meeting all 6 already. We're in a really good place, but when you hear it again, think of like literally the foundation of the schools, and they represent the building blocks. And again, that will be the priority focus when the visiting team comes in. And then the other principles are areas of focus after they determine if the foundational elements are met. If you're curious what the foundational elements actually are, these are the 6. If you take a look, learning culture actually has 2 foundational elements, and you can see that 1.2a, the school has a written document describing its core values, beliefs, and about learning and the vision of a graduate. So as we talked about in the program of studies presentation, we're in the process of revising that. Once that's finished, we'll be able to check that we have one of the foundational elements complete. You can see the other 1.1a is a focus on a safe environment school. In student learning, the foundational element is that there's a written curriculum that's in a consistent format for all courses and all departments across the school. We're almost there. We would be there if COVID didn't happen, but we will be there by 2024, which is great news. The school has a current improvement and growth plan, which we absolutely do, which we'll tweak after the visit as well. The school has intervention strategies designed to support all learners. I think we have a great process right now that we're focused on improving, but I do think we meet that one already. And the school site and plant support the delivery of curriculum, program, and services. So this will be the initial focus. Our school will have to provide evidence saying that we do meet or do not meet the standard. That's just cut and dry. There's no in between for these particular standards, or excuse me, these elements. I'm not going to go over all these. I thought you would be curious in seeing what the other principles are for each of the standards. So as you can see, there are 7, really 8, because there's 1.1, 1.1a, maybe 9 learning culture principles. The 2 that are highlighted in yellow are the foundational elements. But when standard 1, so Jen's leading a committee of how many people? 17 people will work on this particular standard. 2 or 3 people might get assigned standard 1.1. So they're going to look and work with other members of our school community to find the best 3 to 5 pieces of evidence to support that we're meeting the standard. And then they have to write a small paragraph. It's hard to keep it small, I will tell you, for each of the principles. And that makes up the actual report. We're in the beginning phases of this process, and I will tell you, NEASC in some cases could have a negative impact on the culture and climate of your school. Our start has been outstanding. The energy is fantastic right now, and people are saying, when can we keep going? Because it does require a great deal of time. But if you go, again, just going through, you can see standard 2, the learning principles. Again, we won't review all these because we don't have the time, and you have them in your packet. Standard 3, 4, and 5, and then near the summary, just so you have an idea of where we're at. Every single faculty member has been assigned to a committee. We don't have to do that. We thought it was important that everyone had a voice in this process. So people are excited that they're all responsible for a particular area. There are 3 surveys that are required by NEASC. We've already done those. They're actually created by NEASC. We had our liaison visit in October of this year. We're in the process of preparing for the 2-day collaborative visit, and we're looking at the self-reflection process now. We could look at those indents. We're working on writing what's called a look back, our current conditions, our capacity for growth. Then we have to establish goals, and then we define what we think are priority areas, and that's the report that we will give to the collaborative conference visit in the fall while 5 people come and visit. They'll review that, tour the school, and review everything we provide to them in just a day and a half. I've done the other side of the collaborative visit. It's a great process. And then within about 5 weeks, we'll get a collaborative conference visit report, which we'll review. At that point, we have to update our school development plan, and we have 18 to 24 months to actually implement the changes in preparation for the decennial visit, which is on November 17th through 20th of 2024. The 17th is a Sunday. You should mark your calendars because the first meeting in the afternoon, the NEASC visiting committee does meet with the central office administration, the principal, and the Board of Education. You know, that's a few years out. I think we're in an excellent place right now. And moving forward, we have a really solid plan to maximize the little time we have to be fully prepared for the collaborative visit. And then we won't know our next steps until we have that report written. And you'll hear a lot about this because there's a lot of reports. You know, obviously Dr. Cook and Gail will be very aware as well as our entire process. But as a full faculty right now, I feel like we're in a really good place. Questions? Sure.
For those who don't know, what is the benefit of having the accreditation? Are all schools in Connecticut accredited, and what happens if you're not?
Public schools are required to be, public high schools are required to be accredited. They have options for K. I don't know many schools who have gone through that process, but I do know if you're not accredited, you have to establish a plan to meet whatever standards you are not in alignment with and provide evidence in a timely manner. And you know, not being accredited would not be well received. You know, definitely not. The older process didn't seem to focus on some of the great work that happens in really high quality school systems. This revised process I think really aligns with helping schools be very self-reflective, establish goals, move forward, and provide evidence that you're making progress. Again, if you don't receive accreditation, those updated reports that I said were in 2027 through 2030 are probably every 6 months. And you have to provide evidence on the progress you're making to change that status to accredited. It's a pretty daunting process that I'm hopeful we never have to deal with. I doubt we'll ever have to deal with that. Again, I think we're in a great place right now, but it's a process that I hope when our school's finished, we're proud of the report and the input we received. And I will say the faculty at hand looks for, ways to grow and, improve as opposed to just, status quo.
I think it's important to note too that NEASC changed significantly over the past 10 years. When we were first launching the Portrait of a Graduate work, before it was a Portrait of a Graduate, NEASC was not in the same place where they are now, and acknowledging that. And they were looking at things like building structure and counting light bulbs and things that were less impactful to education. So this is more in keeping with the work that we've been doing as a district. So it's a nice place for the faculty to shine, as well as our schools. So I think that's really important to note.
Right, thank you.
That was my immediate impression. Based on your comments, I've been through this process, so I'm very familiar with the NEASC of 10 years ago. And the workload doesn't sound like it's changed, but frequently what used to happen is it would really derail a school. All this energy is then generated towards something that may not really totally align with the mission and the focus of where the school is going. This significant change by the New England Association on Profile of the Graduate and a culture of teaching, from going from teaching to a culture of learning. It sounds like there's tremendous alignment with the vision and mission statement of the district and what we are currently, focused on. So, the opportunity for the staff to put all this energy in, but have it be aligned with what is important to the district and what's important to the school is, it's exciting.
Agreed.
I actually wrote down the word relevant when I heard, I've been around so long with the board that I remember prior NEASC visit at the high school and also prior NEASC visits at the lower schools. And there was always a sense, like Gail said, that, there were artificial standards almost that were not so relevant to the teaching. And as a result, our board, the administration for a while actually got away because, just so you know, Jen, NEASC isn't the only acceptable accrediting authority. The State Board of Education requires that a high school be accredited, but not necessarily by NEASC. And I think NEASC has done a lot of work from what I've seen in self-reflecting and changing the way that it has. And I think that'll help to fold in better with our mission. I agree with what you said, Steve.
It's a daunting process, but it's actually energized an already high quality faculty.
Right,
And they're saying, when can we keep going? Which
that's very exciting.
years ago, NEASC did not have that type of. It was a very different outcome. So
It's a good thing he's wearing a mask.
any other NEASC questions? Great.
Try not to talk.
I know, it does fog immediately.
You good?
You know what that?
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for letting me speak to you about the career and college school counselor position that we would like to put in place within our school counseling department now at the high school. I just kind of want to talk to you about a few of the ways we envision this role to be. The transition from one of our high school counselors to a college and career counselor to us seems like it's much needed, and timing actually couldn't be better with our current enrollment. The position will allow increased opportunities for our high school students to explore their career interests more than they're able to do right now. They will have more exposure through things like field trips, speakers, job shadows, internships, as well as a counselor that's specifically dedicated to, as I said, kind of really dig deeper into career exploration. We want students to make the deeper connections with career exploration, allowing for more than just one lesson a year that we're able to do now, including individual meetings and things like that throughout their high school career. This would also allow our school counselors to focus more on much needed social emotional support for our students, especially like TJ said before, in the times that we're in right now. And it would also better align with the new school counseling standards. Currently, we do have, there are 6 of us at the high school, so the caseloads would be altered a bit, but in doing this, we would hope that the counselor who would transition would stay with their seniors, as we know senior year is a little bit important. So having that connection, we would like for them to stay with their seniors, but the current 9th and 10th grade students would be dispersed among the other counselors, again, allowing us to remain at about 200 students per counselor with the current enrollment. In making this transition, the career and college counselor could complete a Naviance lesson with each grade and provide individual support for students interested in further exploration. So right now, counselors really just get to go in there, like I said, just one time, and then we don't see them again for a year. So they would really be able to do this for every grade level, including seniors, which we don't do now. And that's really a critical time for students to be exploring. They would also create goals for student success plans, and they would help with the college and career fair, which we currently have, hopefully this year again, in collaboration with me. We would help to coordinate that a little bit better. The school counselors would also have more time to support, again, social emotional learning needs, as well as doing more small groups with seniors, especially during the first trimester, and students in need of academic support, which we currently, again, don't have as much time to do in small group setting. So it would allow counselors to do a lot more of that, and focusing more on student success plans and just creating more goals for students, and more in-depth than the one glance and revisiting a year later. So we kind of broke it down in phases, how this would look. And next year, we would hope to have our career counselor do things like establish partnerships in the community, initiate opportunities for future job shadowing and internships, really just getting out there and finding out who would be interested in participating and helping out our students, collaborating with other schools that currently have programs like this, and creating and designing resources for our students and families, reviewing and revising what lessons our school counselors are currently doing, as well as our student success plans. Really digging into Naviance a lot more and using it more than we currently do, and having students be able to store things, like we said, with goals and SMART goals and things like that every year, and seeing their growth as far as career exploration goes. The following year, phase 2, we would hope to have established the database, as I mentioned, for our career exploration, and really start to recruit students to participate in things like shadowing and internships, and also in collaboration with some of our classes, CTE maybe, and incorporating different job opportunities and things like that, and beginning our unpaid experiential learning program, which we've researched over the last couple of years with the State Department of Labor. And we would also continue with programs and presentations and workshops for students and families. So also, again, allowing parents to come in at night, maybe doing some sessions. Just, there's so many careers and opportunities out there, and maybe not focused on a 4-year college, maybe a 2-year program, and just showing students how, what fits best for them. So being able to do a better job with that and really focusing on that. The job responsibilities for this role would be, again, things like job shadowing, setting up shadows for students. Maybe, a child walks in and isn't sure if they want to go into being an X-ray tech or a nurse, and being able to go and maybe make those connections in the community, shadow for a day, or maybe have speakers come in and talk about those different jobs, internships and externships within the community. I know we've talked a lot about that, Gail, and just having students really, go and for, once a week and experience this, and is this really something that they're interested in, and having that on the resume, if it is something that they're interested in. Our Naviance lessons, again, just being more in-depth and not just glancing through, being a liaison for the independent project teachers that we currently have the course, and helping to be a resource for those students and faculty members that are teaching. More career and college searches. We do that as a group, but if a student needs more than one, or really wants to dig deeper, having that one-on-one individual time with someone, having more workshops, like I said, for families and students, and also providing more summer employment opportunities for students, maybe having a job board and things like that. It would really hopefully be a hub for students, and being able to focus on just what's available and what the world has to offer before they leave high school. And just again, to continue to work with our community and maintain those partnerships throughout the community. So it would really just be an extension of what we're doing now, but really with that career focus. We don't have that right now, and it would be nice for students and families to be able to make those connections. Again, a lot of students will change their major in college, we all know that, but if they are able to explore more now, they would maybe be less likely to do that, or choose a school or a program that is a better fit, rather than just knowing someone else went there, or applying to 20 schools and selecting that way, just having a more focus. So that's our ultimate goal with the position, I would say. Yeah.
I love this so much.
Me too.
I just think it's fantastic. It's so responsive, and I just think it's fantastic. I have a junior, but I have kids who've made their way through Daniel Hand, and I think this type of opportunity and this position would afford them to really do a lot of what they kind of do on their own, and I also think it creates a nod to being more equitable, because I think there are some students whose parents just don't know how to, and a lot of times they don't want to hear us. I mean, I'm an educator, my kids are like, Mom, what do you know? Like, so it's so important to have critical adults in their lives, and to, at this time and for this purpose, I cannot say enough about how much I support this.
Craig and I talked over the summer and really kind of came up with,
I love it.
what this could look like. And I agree. I mean, there are so many students that, like I said, they don't know what an X-ray tech is versus a nurse. Do you want to go to school for this long? They're just able to explain that better. And we really don't do a good job with that right now, because it's hard, we're spread a little bit thin, so it makes it difficult. So it would be great for students.
And just to jump in, Gail, Jen and I have been talking about this for years. And, years ago, 1,400 students at Hand. And now we're anticipating 830 next year. This is a really good time to do this, and, without needing additional staffing, making this transition, seems like the perfect time. And it's really exciting when you hear it. And, Gail, we've been, how many years has this been on our plate? And
3, 4.
so it's an exciting opportunity.
It's wonderful, and I love it. Yeah, love it.
It's a huge area, and the outcomes that you identify, I think, are critical. I'm confused, however. Help me understand, because what it feels like is that this huge area that should be impacting on every student, because everybody's going into the world of work, and everybody should be in career pathways, is getting focused on one individual. And I need to understand how that impacts on all the other counselors and what they're providing day in and day out.
The school counselors would still continue to do classroom lessons and things. This person would focus on kind of more the next steps of that and the more individual piece of it. They would help with the career fairs and things like that, but they would be maybe we would do a lesson with the 10th graders in Naviance, and we do a career exploration unit. We always feel like then we leave it. So this person would then be able to follow up with those students. Maybe 20 of the kids were interested in, again, I'll say X-ray tech. Maybe 12 kids are interested in manufacturing. We could then filter those students, and that person, the career person, could have speakers come in, or like I said, maybe 30 kids go on a field trip to a manufacturing site or something. So they would be that person to kind of follow up and do the next steps. But the counselors would certainly still have to be, like you said, it's one person and there's 5 others. So we would certainly be a part of that process, but she would be more focused on the next level of it.
Now, do all of the other counselors do Naviance and student success plans
Yes.
with all of the students in their caseload?
We do. We don't do them necessarily in our caseload. We do it within a certain classroom. So we get to see a little bit of everybody, but the information in Naviance we'll use in our junior meetings and individual meetings with our students. So that is there for them, for us to review.
At some point, I think because I get a little feedback from parents and others, this is an area of great interest in the community. Presentation around career pathways, Naviance, student success plans, the continuum from 8th grade.
Yeah.
I think, would be great for the board, would be great for the general public. So somewhere down the line, we can get that on the agenda.
Actually, this is the first year that Polson has had Naviance as well, so we've extended it to middle school, so we're excited about that.
I'm very excited about this, just as Kathy is. I worked as a contractor at a high school in Howard County, Maryland, that had a very robust intern mentorship program. I actually served as a mentor for a number of years. I was the athletic trainer at the high school. And the kids, it was a very well-received program. It was for credit. They had projects. They were, a certain set amount of hours that they needed to spend off campus. And there were a lot of kids that really benefited in their search for what they wanted to be when they grew up. It doesn't matter if they were going on to a 4-year college or if they were going into a trade program. It really opened up a lot of experiences and knowledge for them. So I think this is great that the focus isn't just on the 4-year path, the 4-year college path, that we're trying to expose to all different numbers of career paths. But this is really exciting to hear about. So congratulations.
I think that's one of the heavy lifts that this position can do, is to reach into the industry, to make the connections within the community. And truly, I think, we have talked about it, and then it's always like, well, who's going to dedicate themselves to making those purposeful moments happen that are important, but also engage the community in the work instead of dropping in and doing a presentation, actually giving it more meaning and a deeper experience. So we have high hopes and aspirations. You can see a phase in for a reason. But I am excited about it. And it does provide a rich entrance into what can be possible. So.
Well, let us know as a board what we can do to help with this, because this is wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes, that's very exciting.
Perfect timing on that. And I know we're running late on time, but the board will hear about this through the budget process. So one of the things that we have done in Madison over the years is, as the high school staff, high school enrollment has gotten smaller, we've automatically just decreased the position or two based on that. Many other districts, as they've looked at this, have added a position. So what we're looking to do is, within the department, basically take somebody and put them into this position in place of eliminating. But this is new work, as Jen said. I think this is occurring, but it's not assigned to anybody. It's not occurring, across the whole building. So what I love about what they've designed here, though, is that it will impact all students in the building. This isn't set for, say, the 5% of students that aren't going to college, or students that aren't sure about what they're doing. That student that thinks he or she is going to be a nurse would have that opportunity. And there's so much out there about nursing right now, for example, that a lot of students are being led to that. And so I've talked to students that said, but you faint at the sight of blood. Like, is this really what you want to do? And so, you give them that opportunity to maybe find out earlier and say, okay, maybe I want to go to something different in healthcare than what I was originally thinking. So I think it's a really great design. We will look to present it to, obviously, the board through the budget process and then the community.
And it impacts the larger community, and really, it's a global impact. It's such a big, it's just one small step, but it's such a huge thing. It's so impactful.
Yeah, it's a great way to get the community invested in the education
Yeah.
of the students, especially when they can be interacting with them on a personal level, in their place of employment, guiding the next generation into the workforce.
Wonderful.
Thank you all so much for your comments, your support.
Thank
you,
Thank you for
Thank you,
those
Jen.
presentations.
Thank you.
Very,
Thanks for
very
the invite.
helpful and informative and exciting. So, our time is run. We have
We
a
are.
motion to adjourn our committee.
I motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
All very
Thanks so much for
much.
coming out tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.